especially in the officer corps. It was very important for us to not so much be skeptics and question everything, but to keep the big picture in mind. So although we are not policymakers, we're not the politicians, and when we were out there doing the job, um, we were expected to get the job done the way we were told to. And the time for reflection of whether it was ideal or not would come later. Certainly we're always offered the opportunity, at least I felt that I always had the opportunity to say, well, this is simply wrong, from a moral standpoint. And I never felt that I came across that dilemma personally with the activities that I did or the missions that I carried out. But the opportunity is certainly there, and I think, at least in our armed forces in the United States, I think it's very important to leadership from our commander, the president, on down, to ensure that we are comfortable with what we're doing, and we understand that what we're doing is for the good of our nation. And if we think that that's not what's happening, we are given the opportunity to provide feedback. So I was really appreciative of that. I think that allowed me to serve comfortably throughout my 20-some years, actually.
Did you hear of any situations where anybody had to question their authority?
Well, through the news media, I think I recall there were some questions about treatment of prisoners or would-be prisoners, and those sorts of dilemmas generally occur with ground forces. So for better or for worse, I was typically not involved in that sort of assessment or decision making. And that certainly doesn't mean I didn't pay attention to it. In fact, through the subsequent conflicts that I served in, it was certainly more important for me to assess. When I was in Afghanistan, I actually had a job on the ground, and had the opportunity to weigh what we're doing there. But even there, when I was right close to conflict on the ground, of very dynamic nature, I didn't see any question about morality in any of the stuff that I participated in. So I guess I was lucky.
What did you do when you served in Afghanistan?
In Afghanistan, I was helping to coordinate air logistics and any other air operations in the country. And it was very early on in U.S. Presence there. It was in 2002. In fact, I was living in a tent for the first anniversary of 9/11, remembering CNN and all the rest of the big international news trucks coming in with their big satellite dishes on the roofs, wondering when they would leave, because the place was just a big circus. But those were really exciting times. I think that's probably for another chapter in interviewing.
This just occurred to me. Did the Scuds actually hit near the airfield?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I thought about that as we moved away. No, and to the best of our recollection, we did see Scud trails in the sky, and we think we saw that they blew up in the air, which would lead us to believe that they were either hit by friendly air defense, Patriot missile systems, or they self-destructed for whatever reason. But they didn't ever come down upon us or right next to us. So that was a good thing. Happy ending.
Did you have any fun downtime activities when you weren't flying?
Sure. The way that we conducted ourselves as professionals in the military really kind of dictated that we had to work hard. And it was understood, it wasn't so much a written rule, but understood by everybody that if you're going to work hard, you're going to play hard. So we definitely would, every chance we got, go out and see the countryside, try to visit with what we were visiting, where we were going. And there was some nightlife, and that was great fun. And probably even more interesting, more exciting than that was the chance to be a global tourist. Um, to me, I would try to get out on the road, eat local, see all the local sites, that sort of thing, as much as I could. Try to learn a little bit of the local languages. That's always been a hobby of mine. Try to learn how to say, how are you, please, thank you, that kind of stuff in every language possible. There were times when I think I probably didn't sleep enough, especially during the conflict there. We were normally given the opportunity to sleep at least 8 hours before we would fly. And in Desert Storm, this isn't so much about the nightlife because we really didn't have any in the middle of Desert Storm. We were working for sometimes about 40 hours at a time, almost 2 days straight, trying to fly back and forth from Europe down to the Middle East and back. Sometimes we would do that twice in one day, or a day and a night, and a day again. And so it was pretty interesting. It would really wreak havoc on our body clocks. We get back home to Germany or Saudi Arabia, and we would fall asleep, wake up 8, 10, 12 hours later, and I can remember waking up in such a daze that I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what time it was. I didn't know what continent I was on sometimes. So that's kind of a harrowing sort of feeling, And it was dangerous. It was, quite honestly, it was dangerous to be that sleep deprived, and then to have all those kind of body clock, body time adjustment issues. Wasn't very safe. And the Air Force, all the military worked really hard to figure out what to do about that. The length of time that we had to do that wasn't very long. It was on the order of weeks, which was good. And it was an eye-opener, like so many things. And all of these things that I experienced were in my 20s. So if you can imagine, like you guys are interviewing me right now in your late teens, it was all within 10 years of where you are right now. All this stuff that I've just talked with you about went down. So it's a pretty short timeline to have all these fantastic, bizarre, shocking, scary experiences.
Working off of that, how do you feel like your life has been shaped by the Air Force? How has it made you as a person? How has it changed you?
How has it changed? Well, there's certainly a lot of structure in the military. There's always a focus on a goal. What are your goals? What do you want to get done? How are you going to do it? How are you going to coordinate with other people to get that stuff done? And I think the biggest thing that I took away from military experience is not only should we all be interested in having personal goals or professional goals, or a mixture of the two. What do you want to do for work? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years, that sort of thing. You can't just focus on what your goals are. You have to focus on how you're going to get them done. And in the military, it became readily apparent that you need good training, good equipment, and good people. And those three factors have carried through in post-military life for me as well. You have to be able to work with good people. You have to yourself be a good person to be able to get along with others, And you have to be able to amass the right kind of equipment to get your job done. And you certainly need to get the right training or education, same thing. So I suppose in my post-military life, I've tried to look at things and see if or that they are very parallel. And most everything has been very parallel to military life that still accounts for the majority of my adult life. 3 years as a civilian, 20 some years in the military. So it's there are differences, but I think an awful lot of the things that I learned and did in the military culture, military way of life, have transferred over to help me out in the civilian world too.
Just going back to the sleep deprivation, was it hard to perform like the tasks that you have to do when flying the plane when you're sleep deprived, or do you have any trouble with that? Or
Absolutely. And it goes back to that team effort sort of thing, what we would do. And at the time, it wasn't even written whether this was an approved, acceptable thing to do by the regulations. But what we decided we had to do was take turns. And we would typically, for those very long days, in fact, we had to have, I think it was either 3 or 4 pilots on board. And only 2 at a time, of course, up in the seats. So we learned very quickly that the only way we're going to make it through this almost 2-day